EP13, The Help That's Already Here, How Community Development Works in Monmouth County. Welcome back to Heart of the Shore, from Love of Humanity. Today, I want to talk about something that can sound like paperwork and acronyms, but it's actually one of the most practical ways a community takes care of itself. It's called community development. And when it works well, it shows up as things like a senior who can safely stay in their home because a dangerous set of stairs finally gets repaired, a family that avoids eviction because they're connected to the right support at the right time, a neighborhood park or community center that becomes safer and more accessible, a local nonprofit that can expand a program that's already saving lives, or a town that finally has the resources to fix a long-neglected drainage problem that keeps flooding basements. These outcomes don't happen by magic. A lot of it comes from local government teams, community organizations, and residents working together to bring in funding, plan projects, and then actually follow through. So today we're going to do 3 things. 1. Make community development plain language. 2. Explain how some of the money flows, federal, state, county, municipal, without getting lost in bureaucracy. And 3, give you a simple way to plug in, how to find resources if you need help, and how to influence priorities if you want to help your neighbors. And just to keep us grounded, this episode is focused on the Jersey Shore, especially Monmouth County, but the ideas apply across New Jersey. All right, let's start with a question. What do we mean when we say community development? In everyday terms, community development is how a place invests in the basics people need to live with stability and dignity. That includes housing that's safe and healthy, streets, sidewalks, lighting, and drainage that work, public spaces where kids and elders can safely gather, support services that help people stay housed, get food, get health care, and recover from crises, and local opportunities, job training, small business support, so people aren't stuck. Now, you might be thinking, isn't that just the job of government? In some ways, yes. But in practice, most towns and counties don't have endless money sitting around for repairs, accessibility upgrades, housing rehab, or new programs. So community development is often about unlocking targeted funding sources, especially federal programs, and using them in a way that meets local needs. And there are 2 key ideas underneath it all. First, priorities. What do we fund first? Second, process. How do we decide? Who gets to speak, and what gets measured? Because if we don't pay attention, funding can drift toward whoever shouts the loudest or whoever already knows the system. And the people who need it most might never even hear that help exists. So let's talk about the money streams, but in a human way. The big program people often hear about is CDBG, Community Development Block Grant. Here's the simplest explanation I know. It's federal money, originally designed to strengthen communities by investing in housing, public facilities, and neighborhood revitalization, with a strong focus on benefiting low and moderate income residents. It's not just one type of project, it's a flexible block of funding that communities can use across different priorities, as long as they meet the program's rules.
Those rules are built around what the program calls national objectives. The money has to clearly do at least one of these things. 1. Benefit low and moderate income people. 2. Prevent or eliminate slum and blight. Or 3. Address urgent needs when there's no other funding available. New Jersey also runs a version called the Small Cities CDBG program. It's managed through the NJ Department of Community Affairs, and it supports economic development, housing rehab, community revitalization, and public facilities in counties and municipalities that are not entitlement jurisdictions. The language on the state program is very direct. It's meant for projects that benefit low and moderate income people, prevent or eliminate slum and blight, or address urgent local needs where no other funding exists. So that's CDBG. Then there are other major funding streams that often travel alongside it. For example, home funds, the Home Investment Partnership Program, which supports affordable housing activities, and Emergency Solutions Grants, ESG, which are focused on homelessness services like emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, and homelessness prevention. Now, I'm going to pause and say something important. When you hear these acronyms, it's easy to think, that's not for me, that's for policy people. But if you live here, it is for you. Because these programs ultimately shape the options available on the ground. They shape whether a nonprofit can expand. They shape whether housing rehab is possible. They shape whether a town can make a public building accessible. And they shape what happens when a family is one unexpected bill away from losing stability. So let's bring it home to Monmouth County. Monmouth County has an Office of Community Development. On the county's community development page, they describe coordinating, implementing, and monitoring compliance for several federal grant programs, including Community Development Block Grant, the Home Investment Partnership Program, Emergency Solutions Grant, ESG, and HEARTH Homeless Assistance Grants. They also mentioned HUD's Continuum of Care funding. And here's a detail that matters. They describe overseeing an annual budget of more than $7.5 million in federal grants. More than $7.5 million. That's not a small number. Now, that money doesn't just appear in people's pockets. It's not like a single check that arrives and solves everything. It comes with rules, reporting, and often long planning cycles. But it can fund real projects. It can be used for housing rehab, affordable housing development, homelessness supports, public facility improvements, and other community priorities. So the question is, how do priorities get set? Generally, programs like these require planning documents. Think of them as the community's plan for using the funds. Counties often have something called a consolidated plan, typically 5 years, and then annual action plans. That's where needs are assessed and projects are proposed. There's often a public comment period. There are meetings, and there are partnerships with municipalities and nonprofits. And that's the first big takeaway of today's episode. Community development is not just a funding program. It's a yearly conversation about what matters most and whether we're willing to show up to shape it. Now, I want to paint a picture of what this looks like at the street level.
Imagine a town has a cluster of older homes, many owned by seniors on fixed incomes. A roof leak turns into mold. A broken stair becomes a fall risk. A bathroom that isn't accessible becomes a reason someone has to leave their home. These issues are common, and they're expensive. If you're on a fixed income, you can't always finance repairs. And if a home deteriorates, the whole neighborhood can feel the impact. So a housing rehabilitation program is a community development tool. It can stabilize families, it can keep elders in place, it can prevent displacement, and it can protect neighborhood health. Or imagine a nonprofit that runs a food pantry and also provides case management. They're seeing more people who are working but still can't keep up: rent, utilities, childcare. If they can get a grant, they may be able to expand hours, improve storage capacity, or add staff. And that can be the difference between someone getting help this week or falling through the cracks. Or think about a public building, a library, a senior center, a community clinic. If it's not accessible, that's not just an inconvenience, it's exclusion. An accessible entrance, a safer parking lot, better lighting, these are community development decisions. So, why does this matter right now? Because we're living through a time where fragility is closer to the surface. A lot of people are doing their best,
working, caring for family, and still one crisis away from a downward spiral. And local government can either be an invisible maze or it can be a bridge. Community development is one of the ways that bridge gets built. But for it to work, the community has to understand it well enough to participate. So let's talk about what you can do as a resident. There are two modes. Mode 1 is I need help. Mode 2 is I want to help shape what happens. Let's start with the first one. If you need help and you don't know where to begin, one of the most practical tools in New Jersey is NJ211. NJ211 is designed to connect residents with health and human service programs. They describe providing support via phone, chat, text, and web, and they operate 24 hours a day, every day of the year. And the reason that's powerful is simple. You don't have to guess which office handles what. You don't have to call 5 numbers and tell your story 5 times. You start in one place. Now, I want to be clear, NJ211 is not the only entry point. If you already know the local agency, like your municipal social services office or a county division, call them. But for many people, the hardest part is simply knowing where to start. And that's what 211 is for. Now, Mode 2, shaping priorities, is the part many of us skip because we're busy or we assume it won't matter. But when you're deciding how millions of dollars get spent, the people who show up do matter. Here are a few ways to engage without needing a policy degree. First, pay attention to public notices. When a county or town is preparing an annual action plan, there's often a public comment period. Sometimes it's a meeting, sometimes it's written comments, sometimes it's both. If you can, read the summary. You don't have to read 100 pages. Look at the proposed priorities. Ask yourself, does this match what we're seeing? Second, bring specific stories, not just complaints. Instead of, our town needs more help, say,
Our senior neighbors are trying to age in place, but home repair costs are pushing them out. Can we expand housing rehab? Or, our neighborhood floods repeatedly and it's damaging homes. What projects are eligible for infrastructure improvements? Or, our community center is used by families and kids, but it's not accessible. Can accessibility be a priority? When you make it concrete, it becomes possible to fund. Third, partner. If you're part of a faith community, a PTA, a tenants group, a neighborhood association, or a volunteer network, you already have a platform. You can invite a local community development staff member to speak. You can host an information session. You can share sign-up links and meeting dates. The goal is not to fight City Hall. The goal is to help the people inside the system hear what's real on the ground. Fourth, learn the difference between services and capital. A lot of community development funding is geared toward physical improvements, housing rehab, facilities, infrastructure. Some of it can support services, but there are often caps and restrictions. So if a town says, we can't fund that service with this pot of money, it doesn't always mean they don't care. It might mean the funding rules require a different approach. And once you understand that, you can ask a better question. Okay, if that funding can't cover the service, what can it cover? And what other funding can cover the service? That's how communities get smarter. Now I want to talk about one more thing that's often missing from these conversations. Trust. Many people do not trust government processes, sometimes for good reason. They've been promised things that didn't happen. They've seen money spent in ways that didn't benefit their neighborhood. They've experienced disrespect or silence when they ask for help. So if you feel skeptical, you're not alone. But here's the hard truth. If people who care about fairness stop participating, the system becomes even easier to capture by insiders, by special interests, by inertia. Community development programs are one of the places where community voice is not only allowed, it's required. These programs literally depend on public input. So participation is not a favor, it's part of how the money is supposed to work. And I want to offer a frame that can help. Instead of asking,
Do I trust the system? Ask, what small action can I take that makes the system more accountable? That might be submitting a comment, showing up to one meeting, asking for a plain language summary, helping a neighbor find NJ211, sharing a program link, or reaching out to the county office for information. Speaking of that, if you're in Monmouth County and you want to learn about community development programs, the county's Office of Community Development lists a contact email and phone number. You can reach them at communitydevelopment@co.monmouth.nj.us and 732-431-7460. Now let's zoom out one more level. Community development is also about long-term resilience. When we invest in housing stability, we reduce emergency costs later. When we invest in safe public facilities, we strengthen social connection. When we invest in infrastructure, we reduce repeated damage from storms. And when we invest in accessibility, we include neighbors who are too often left out. This is why I like the phrase, the help that's already here.
Because many communities already have programs and systems, but they're often hidden behind unfamiliar language, or they're fragmented across different agencies, or they're difficult to navigate. And in that gap between what exists and what people can access, a lot of suffering happens. So if you take nothing else from today, take this. There are resources designed to help, and there are ways to influence how those resources get used. You don't have to do it alone. Start with one step. If you need help, start with NJ211. If you want to help shape priorities, look for your county or town's community development notices and comment opportunities. And if you're in Monmouth County specifically, the Office of Community Development is a direct point of contact. Before we close, I want to end with a short reflection. The shore is a place of beauty, beaches, boardwalks, summer traditions, but it's also a place with real pressures, high housing costs, seasonal economies, flooding risks, and families who are quietly doing the math every week. Community development is one way we say, as a region, we're not going to leave people behind. Not because it's easy, but because we belong to each other. This has been Heart of the Shore from Love of Humanity. If this episode helped you understand a little more about how support systems work, share it with a neighbor. And if you have a story about a program that made a difference or a barrier that needs attention, send it our way through Love of Humanity. We'll keep showing up. Talk to you next time. Love of Humanity.